Now, what happens when showing up becomes just another checkbox and nobody notices that you've mentally actually checked out? Well, in today's workplace, the line between doing the bare minimum and burning out completely is thinner than ever. And that's why we're talking about quiet quitting. Welcome to Workplace Whispers with the MD CEO of Strategic Outsourcing Limited, Dr. Olufemi Ogunlowo. Good to be here. And joining us is Oluwapelumi Akinola, a top HR consultant and chair of the CIPM Lekki Ajah Badore chapter. And together, our mission here is to unpack the quiet crisis behind employee disengagement and what is actually responsible. It's Workplace Whispers. Let's talk.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for coming. Welcome to Workplace Whispers.
Thank you, sir.
And I hope you enjoyed the conference, the Lagos conference.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And I hope we also had the opportunity to unwind, at the conference.
Sure.
So,
Indeed.
great.
Thank you.
So, will the conference be, for instance, an opportunity for someone to rejuvenate, or is just a lot of work again?
No, not at all. CIPM conferences are designed for one to also rest, for one to network, right? So yes, there's accommodation, there are breaks in between the sessions, so you can take out time to cool off, you can take out time to also even visit good sites that are close to the location for the conference.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of when we're looking at how one can recharge, maybe not just holidays.
Definitely.
But, many other options.
Yeah.
So, Praise, what do you want us to attend to?
Exactly. I was talking about that to avoid burnout in the workplace and this rise of quiet quitting that we hear. We hear on time, and when we go online, we talk about people leaving. They spent 5 months, 1 year leaving places. So I'd like to know, what do you think is the reason behind quiet quitting? And do you even think there's an increase of that lately?
Well, it's difficult to say whether there is an increase or not because we don't have the statistics. But if we step back and say, first of all, what is burnout? We must have an idea of what it is that we are trying to define and what are the causes of burnout, And I think eventually it's going to be up to individual to actually know their own state, right? But a burnout is simply when the individual is completely exhausted, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And there are so many factors that could actually cause this, And in the workplace, there could be factors in the workplace, but there could be factors outside of the workplace that are also creeping into the life of the staff that is then creating the burnout. And so it would be nice to make a distinction between a burnout that is inflicted or caused by things happening in the workplace or a burnout that is actually caused by other factors outside of the workplace. And again, that's where work-life balance also then comes in. So I think, maybe from your experience, which one do you think many people experience more? Burnout from within the organization based on their work, or burnout from other factors like family pressures, driving to work, transport, commuting, and so on.
Well, so I think that was a good perspective, defining the context, that there are factors that are within the control of organizations, and there are also factors outside of the organizations. So using Nigeria, using Lagos as a case study, many of us know that we spend a larger part of our life in the workplace. Many people don't even do 8 to 5. Many people do 8 to 7, right?
Okay.
Or 8 to 10, especially people who are in consulting and you have high deadlines, high and all of that. So from my own experience, I see it as burnout in the workplace, majorly in the workplace. Yes, there are some factors that are also contributory in terms of, an employee having external debt outside. Maybe he or she collected a loan from a bank and there's so much pressure to pay back, or the loss of a loved one, and all of that. But many times the higher degree of it is within the organization.
But before we come into the organization, so for instance, here in SOL, we have a policy that any employee that is within what we call the technical and platform assistant role, which is basically employees that are within the OND and school SAT, officers, are recruited within 2 bus stops from our offices, such that at any point in time they can get to work with just 1 drop and return home with 1 drop, right? And that helps because in that situation they do not spend hours on the road. But we can extend the same philosophy to graduate level staffs. So you find people coming from K2 to Lekki. You find people coming from Ikorodu to Lekki. And so they leave home at maybe 5 a.m. And you want to be an exciting place to work. But someone has left home at 5 a.m. Of course, by the time he gets to work at 7, he's already spent 2 hours. Now, work starts at 8, he spent 3 hours. So the pressure of the work itself then piles for the day, but he sees 5 o'clock, he wants to get out of the door quickly because it's going to take another 4 hours to get home. So he gets home at 9, 9:30, 10. So let's forget about every other thing that has happened in the workplace. Is that person not already positioned to be vulnerable?
True. Based on the story you just cited, the proximity to burnout is higher. Okay, for professionals who live far from where they work, they have this high propensity to get burnt out easily, and that's why it's also good that we also consider, employees should consider. Yes, there are certain things that employers of labor, the organizations, can do in terms of maybe providing transportation palliatives, providing staff bus, but there are also certain things that employees must also do to take their performance into their own hands. That, hey, this is where my office is located. I must do everything within my power to get here on time, such that I'm able to deliver. Some people even come as far as Ogun State to come and work in Lagos. And I'm wondering, okay, how do you intend to deliver? Because by the time you get to the office and your line manager is asking for something that is due, you begin to give excuses, which is not supposed to be, right? So yes, employees can also do better in terms of getting accommodations that are close to their workplace so that they're able to deliver on time. But yes, not everybody can afford houses in Lagos. No, not everybody can even in Lekki.
Yeah.
No, not everybody.
I think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So whether it's River State or Abuja or whatever, centers are typically more expensive than the suburbs.
True.
So that is where the question would then arise. Are we paying enough as employers for employees to be able to afford the decent living within proximate locations to the office? Now, this is not a local question. In the city of London, in the city of Paris, everywhere is the same. People commute by train. All right, but the difference is that you can jump on the train and take a 45-minute train ride to get to work, but that's a 3-hour road journey. But here you don't have those options. Yeah, thank you. In Lagos and in Abuja, maybe there are some train services that are coming up, but the structural deficiencies make people already prone. There no amount of diligence that you have, even if the employer provides a staff bus, would make an employee who lives in Ajangbadi to get to VI without leaving home at 4 a.m.
Sure.
So the question is, just by living in Ajangbadi, have you removed yourself from shortlisting for a role on the island or a role in Ikeja, as an example? So I know the issue and focus here is burnout,
Yes.
but the underlying factors, such that by the time the supervisor then comes in and is even asking for performance, the staff already feels that the supervisor is insensitive. Sure. And that aggravates and creates that environment to let burnout foster. Sure. So how can we step back can we do? What are the options we have to be able to address this?
All right. So we can look at the solutions from, let's say, two perspectives. One from the employer perspective and another from the employee perspective. So before now, I was living somewhere close to Songotedo, and my office was in Ikoyi. And many times I spent close to 3 hours before I get to the office. And I'm like, no way, this is not possible. I had to relocate. I had to relocate to Shomolu, where once I cross the third mainland bridge, I'm already in Ikoyi. And within 45 minutes, 50 minutes, I'm in the office. So there are certain things that employees must also do. They have to take their work personal. So there are certain things that are within your control. Then again, for employers, we can also look into certain things. We can look into flexible work arrangements that, hey, okay, you can take one day work from home, maybe on a Wednesday, you come to the office Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, so that tension, it's not there that, oh, you get home late.
Let me ask you.
Okay.
How do you get your driver to do remote work?
Definitely. So, yes, there are some roles that can't fit into remote work, but there are some roles as well that can also fit in. Some roles by design are meant for fully on site, but again, some roles can also get that benefit. Right, even for drivers, some organizations have, more than one driver where they run shifts, so that can also provide some sort of
but
comfort.
when they're running the shift, they're still going to make their 40-hour week and all of that.
Definitely.
So eventually, they're still going to be physically present.
Yes.
So that the reason why I brought that up is that, yes, whereas remote work, flexible work sometimes is deemed as an avenue out of this complicated scenario. Okay. But we've seen, I was speaking to a business partner 2-3 days ago, and it was clear, when you work from home, you tend to work longer.
True. For the record, that's absolutely correct.
So, yes, you may not physically have exhaustion because of travel, but you actually have mental exhaustion.
True.
So how do we get this situation addressed where employees don't get burnt out? Because the more employees get burnt out, the less productive they become.
Okay. So again, for remote workers or flexible workers, you have to also be able to take charge of your work. At the point, I was working in a company where we had many software developers, and most of these guys work hybrid. But even when they work from home, there's still a lot of tension. There's a lot of work for them to deliver. Many of them can solve, certain bugs, certain technical issues for hours. So first is for you to recognize that there is a limit to what you can do per time. There are some tasks you can get delivered within the hour. There are some tasks you can't get delivered within a day. So when you've done the work, it's like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., you must put that control on yourself that, hey, I need to stand up from this chair right now. I need to take a break. I need to get something to eat. I need to take a walk. I need to stretch my legs. Why? Because even within the confines of your home, your house, nobody is there to watch over you, especially if you are even single, right? You don't have a partner to say, honey, please come and take this meal, come and take this drink. No, you have to take ownership of it and say, my health matters as much as my work, and I have to, do something about it. It's very, very key that we know that, yes, we are going to deliver, but then again, our health is part of our life.
So how do we bring the employer in now to say, okay, whereas individuals must take responsibility for their own health.
Yeah.
As employers, we have programs that support mental health, emotional health, and work-life balance, and yet productivity. How do we balance all of those?
Okay, so from the employer side, it begins with having systems and structures in place, policies that support all-round health, emotional, physical health, psychological health, even spiritual health, right? So you must have policies that accommodate all of this. Say, for example, not just having HMO in place, but having access to HMO plans that are rich. Some HMO plans just afford employees with just paracetamol and plaster, and that's all. While some are comprehensive, while some are comprehensive enough for you to be able to access at least something reasonable, something needed for your system. Okay, so that's one. Another thing again, you can also get group life insurance, right? Have access to group life insurance where employees who are very prone to accidents, injuries, within the organization or within a client site can also access this and say, hey, there is an insurance covering this aspect of my life. So employers can also be very deliberate. We could also have mental health days. Some organizations don't even have as basic as first aid box. And you talk about prioritizing employees' health without having a first aid box, that's contradictory. So employers can do certain things within their own reach to say, guys, this and this are put in place for you to know that of a truth, we value your lives. Yeah.
I mean, so we have some programs, for instance, where we try to encourage our staff to access our occupational counselors. We have counselors who are PhD in their fields. But what I've realized is that counseling, whereas it can help you support your emotional needs and help with the steps to take, if you don't take responsibility for knowing that everything really at the end it's about you, because if you produce well in the organization, you get the reward, you get the recognition. If you don't, you get the consequences. If you walk yourself to death, you get buried. So at the end of the day, it's all about you. So at the end of the day, every individual, now when I say get buried, you can get buried in work, which can lead you to get buried in the ground. So we must then say, look, this is really about me. This job is important for me, but I have this job because I have my life.
True.
So I will make sure that my life is in a good state so that I can continue to have a job. And that responsibility then also means that I will assess an organization where I work. And if I think at any point in time the organization is training me, I would be decent enough to have a conversation with my supervisor about it and be open.
Definitely.
And from that point, if we have common understanding, we'll figure out how to move forward. If we don't have common understanding, it's tough out there to get a job, but it's only where you are living that you can have one.
Definitely, I totally agree with that. And just to sum it up, like you said, it begins with employees having an ownership mindset that my life, my work is in my hands, right? The entry and the exit is also my decision in the first place. I signed the offer letter. I can also table down I can table down the resignation letter. So, yes, some employees are literally dying in silence, as some have chronic conditions and they hid it from the organization. Some have access to annual leaves and will say, no, it's all about the work. We have to deliver. We have to meet deadlines. Even when they are due, some have piled up annual leaves for years, 2-3 years, and they'll say,
I think that
I'll
can
go.
probably only happen in public sector, right?
Well,
or does it also happen?
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yes. I've had conversations with my friends and they'll tell me some of their line managers, even days they're supposed to work remotely, they want to come to the office. When they're supposed to be on leave, they'll still be calling, okay, have you delivered this? Can you just take a break? Can you just go on vacation? So I think from an employer standpoint now, employers must also see how they can mandate employees to take some of these things. Guys, you're on leave, take your leave. You're on leave, don't send any mail. We're on weekends, please, can you just let some work that can wait till Monday, right? There need to be some checks around some of these things, so that, because some employees take leave and they feel guilty for going on leave, right? So it begins with the employees.
Are there job roles that are just prone to burnout? So, for instance, a medical doctor who has to do night shift, do this, go into surgery, I mean, could they easily be prone to burning out faster than a classroom teacher who teaches between 8 and 5, but who also has to prepare lesson notes and stay home marking scripts of 200 kids and correcting assignments? Because sometimes we think that because you spend fewer hours with physically, that's the extent of your work. But you may find out that some, for instance, a producer, a writer, they say it takes maybe 10 hours to prepare for a 25-minute presentation. But what you will see on the outside is the 25 minutes. But the 10 hours that has gone behind, which could actually be what burns you out, is unseen.
Yeah. So, yes, some job roles are prone to burnout, right? There was a time we were trying to access medical care for someone close to me, and I got to know that the doctor in charge of that particular service has to visit at least 5 national hospitals in a week in Nigeria, from UI to Abuja to Lagos. And I'm like, how do you do this? You would just break down and you just go like that. A friend also shared a story with me, a particular of a colleague who just slept. He left the office really late, slept, and was unreachable. They couldn't reach him. He was not picking his phone, and getting to his apartment, he's gone. Right? So yes, there are some roles that are prone. Some roles, for example, in a consulting space, those who are client facing have more work to do than the back-end guys. Right? So yes, there are some roles. However, the same principle still applies, that the employees must be able to take certain things into their hands. If you are feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, overworked, communicate, open up. Yes, it may be perceived as weakness to some line managers that why are you giving an excuse? Why are you doing this? But hey, let it be on record, not just verbal, but let it be on record that you actually communicated that issue to your line manager.
Now, still on this issue of burnout, I'm glad that we stayed on this for a while, because even in the corporate space, we hear a lot of people say, I'm just burnt out, I'm stressed. So how do we differentiate an employee who is genuinely burnt out and an employee who is just simply underperforming on the job?
Well, it plays out most especially in this generation of Gen Zs and millennials. While any little complaint, any little additional work, a typical Gen Z employee will say, you're stressing me, you're impacting my mental health.
Yes.
Right? And it becomes a dynamic situation for line managers to really, really handle. So yes, we can look at the similarity, however, they are not entirely the same. Right? They are not entirely the same. Employees who are burnt out, you can see it in their engagement, emotionally, physically, and otherwise. I mean, you can easily notice an employee who, in a team meeting, he or she contributes. She's the first person to attend the meeting. She's the one active. She's the one turning on a video. She's the one following up, asking questions. And all of a sudden, she just wants to attend and just listening. You should know that that is an indicator that something is going on somewhere. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, and absolutely. So, performance is a function of complete state of mind, competence, resources, even the task assigned, and so on and so forth. So if any of those variables becomes distorted, it could affect the performance. So if what is distorted, for instance, is the competence, in which case the person doesn't have the competence to deliver on that job, it will lead to non-performance, but there's no burnout. But that non-performance can then lead to burnout because the supervisor begins to demand for performance, and this can affect the state of mind, can affect the mental health, and can even affect physical health, So the fact that someone is not competent on the job that they have, which makes them to have low productivity, can result into a burnout on its own. And a burnout that is caused by so many other factors, where the competence is there and the performance was there prior, could also lead to poor performance. So the question is being able to, as a manager, notice the performance trend of an employee and asking questions to know what are the underlying factors. Someone that has been turning up for meetings and is suddenly turning up late. It could be that something is going on at home. It could be that there is road construction going on in their environment. It could be that they start locking the gates and not opening it because of security factor and so on. So if the supervisor doesn't engage, he doesn't get to know. So, but where the supervisor doesn't engage, the staff should also walk up to say, look, sir, I would like to discuss something with you just to make sure that you understand my situation and how it may affect everything I'm doing.
It's also expedient for organizations to really invest in managers so that they're able to identify the symptoms, the signs of this burnout at early stage, right? And leaders as well are able to manage the situation. The goal is not perfection, the goal is performance, right? And leaders must be able to approach it with kindness, with empathy, right? Strategically manage the situation, not just following up on deliveries, but also following up on well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when an organization says we have work-life balance, what does that mean? The real sense, because a lot of times people say work-life balance, but what they are doing is they say, let's have a beach event on Saturday. Maybe that is even what is causing the imbalance, because the staff that has worked Monday to Friday, who now wants to rest and spend time with the family, is now going for team bonding, activity. And so we must ensure that it's not just what do you call it now? What is popular that we are just trying to do, but what is right, for us.
Because of time, let's talk about next steps now. What should a CEO, a business owner, a manager who is watching this particular episode do, to his organization afterwards watching this to avoid maybe burnout, quiet quitting in their organization?
Take stock. Just take stock. At this moment, within my organization, how are the people feeling? Do vitals. I don't mean take temperature and all of that, but just generally be sure that your people are fine and have open conversation.
True. I really agree with that point. So it begins with reflections, gathering data. How do you gather data? Engage the employee. The factors causing burnout for employee A may not be the same factor for employee B, right? Some of these things have their peculiarities. So engage. If you have to deploy surveys, questionnaires, one-on-one interviews, stay interviews, engage employees on those things and get the feedback
or
that
the old-fashioned walking
this.
Around management by walking
Exactly.
around. How do you feel?
How do you do?
How do you do?
Exactly. It goes a long way as well. But most importantly, encourage open dialogue, open communication. Let employees know that they are safe in communicating their concerns, their issues. Yeah.
I think we've had a very powerful conversation today, Dr. Olulowo.
Thank you, Prince.
Yes.
And it's a pleasure to have you on set with us. And we look forward to having you here another time. I'm sure there are other things we can talk about.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much as well for watching this particular episode of Workplace Whispers. Do well to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and family members. And please, in the comments, let us know what you want us to talk about next. Thank you so much. It's Workplace Whispers.